The best way to start getting familiar with classes and objects is to begin by using classes that are already defined in your language and just creating objects from those built-in classes. We can later define our own classes and create objects from those classes. Now this sounds complex. It really isn't. In fact, we've already done it. See, in JavaScript, when you make an array variable, you've made an object. When you make a regular expression variable, you've made an object. These are both built-in objects in JavaScript. On the other hand, when you make a variable that's a number or a variable that's a Boolean, these are not objects. These are what can be referred to as primitives. Primitives really just store a value. That's it. But as we've seen, when you've got an object, this is not just a dumping ground for data. When you have an array, you can ask things of it. They have properties like length. And they have methods. We can ask them to sort themselves or reverse themselves. With regular expressions, we can call the test method on a regular expression variable to see if the pattern matches another string. They're smart, and they have methods and they have properties, and that's what we mean by an object. One of the great things is they're independent of each other. Objects might be based on the same class, but I could have 1,000 array objects and work with each of them separately. Now, there are a few other objects in JavaScript. One of them is the date object. This would be the way we'd create a new date object variable. I'd say var today equals new date. The variable today would now contain today's date, not as a string, but as a date object. We can create new date objects with a particular date in. And actually, because this object definition stores time, we could even create a new date object with a year, month, day, hours, minutes, seconds in it. Now you might think, but so what? Well, of course, the great thing is these are objects. They have properties and they have methods. We can start using the name of one of these variables, like today or Y2K, and calling parts of it. We can say today.getMonth. That would return 0 through 11 for the month. Today.getFullYear returns the normal year. .getDate, .getDay, .getHours, and so on. So there's a lot of behavior that the date object can give us to start pulling apart dates. And not only that, but they have the flip side of the get methods, which are set methods. We can create a new date object and then use it to say .setMonth or .setFullYear or .setDay. And using it makes it much easier to work with dates, which can be a little complex if you just decide to store them as individual variables representing a year and a month and a day. There's also a math object built into JavaScript. This one's a little different. While objects like arrays and dates, we can think of them as mainly holding data, and it's just nice that they have a little behavior that comes with that. The math object, on the other hand, is there mainly to contain behavior. You don't really store data in it. What you might do is first say create a variable called x. I'm setting this to 200.6, and I'd like to round this number. This is the way I'd do it. I'd create a new variable called y, and create it by calling math.round, passing in that variable x. That would give me 201. It would round it up. So we often just use the math object directly. Say we create several variables. One's 200, one's 10,000, one is 4. But at some point in my program, I don't know which one's which and which one's higher. I can create a new variable called biggest, which will be whatever gets returned from calling math.max and passing in those 3 numbers. In fact, math.max will take as many numbers as you want to pass into it and always return the biggest one. If we have a .max, it would be nice if we had a .min, and not surprisingly, we do. So the math object is there and has many built-in methods and properties for giving us pi, calculating random numbers, rounding things up or down, calculating logarithms, sines and cosines, and so on. So JavaScript has an array class, it has a regular expression class, a date class, and a math class, and several others. Now to find out, you'd go to a JavaScript reference guide. But JavaScript really doesn't have very many. Other languages have hundreds or even thousands of predefined classes available, grouped into different categories. Now, what's very common in object-oriented languages is using the name of the class when you create the object. That's what we're doing here. We're creating a new variable. It's called today. and it will be a date object based on the date class. Now, when you use the name of the class, by convention in JavaScript, it has an uppercase first letter. There's nothing magical about that. It just helps us recognize it. That's how it was defined in the language. And if we make our own, we'll probably use an uppercase first letter too. But you might think, well, when I made an array, I wasn't using the word array. Well, no, that's because JavaScript has a lot of shortcuts, but you can. So the easy way to make an array is this one, just using the square brackets. But you can also create an array this way, using the word array, which is the name of the class, and the word new. In the same way, when we're creating a regular expression, I can use the shortcut form in JavaScript to create a new regular expression object, or I can use the name of the class, which is regexp. And this word new is used in many object-oriented languages as an explicit indicator that what we're doing is creating a new object based on a class. Now, some of you might be wondering about strings. Well, strings are objects in most object-oriented programming languages. In JavaScript, they do behave like objects. They have properties and methods we can access, although technically they're not. Technically, they're primitives. But that's really because JavaScript is not the purest of object-oriented languages. So let's talk about some languages that are pretty pure and what the difference is.